White people have never even liked each other. And why would they? They're awful. White people love to act like they've built the most advanced, unified civilizations, but history suggests they've spent more time fighting, betraying, and resenting one another than actually working together. They waged wars of brutal conquest against their own neighbors. They divided themselves into endless class hierarchies where even the rich barely tolerated each other. Their royal families intermarried so much they caused genetic disasters rather than share power with outsiders. They built entire nations on the idea that some white people weren't white enough. Even today, their political and social divisions are so extreme that they can barely function as societies. At some point, we have to ask, if white people were truly the standard for human civilization, why have they spent history being their own worst enemy? White people spent most of their history slaughtering each other. The 100 Years' War, white people fighting white people for 116 years. The War of Roses, white nobles slaughtering each other for a throne. The English Civil War, white people fighting over how they should govern themselves. The Napoleonic Wars, France versus the rest of white Europe for nearly 2 decades. World War I and II, white people causing global destruction over their own internal disputes. Meanwhile, non-white societies built systems of cooperation. Many indigenous societies maintained peace through complex alliances and trade networks. African kingdoms built economic coalitions instead of destroying each other over minor grievances. Asian dynasties formed diplomatic marriages and power-sharing agreements to avoid unnecessary war. White people weren't building civilizations. They were just taking breaks between wars. White people's social hierarchies have always been built on hating each other. Medieval Europe was structured so that peasants suffered while nobles hoarded wealth, and they still fought amongst themselves. The Catholic and Protestant schism turned Christianity into an excuse for white people to unalive each other for centuries. Aristocrats in every European country looked down on merchants.
Hey, remember when I said that we need to go and relearn our histories? We need to go and check some things that we were told. Now, it's interesting that we are having this communication in as much as it is so harsh, because this white man who is speaking right now is saying the brutal, naked truth. And I agree with him. And for the longest time, I've tried to show you that through revisionist history, the United States have lied a lot to black people. They have lied a lot to also white people. And they sold them the inflated fallacy that their civilization, they were the ones who civilized the world. They're the ones who brought light to the world, right? White people lived in those dark ages. And it is the Moors that came and taught them most of the things that are happening today, right? Today, we're going to watch this video by this white man who is giving a brutal takedown of what indeed is what we call white history. And this is purposefully for educational purposes. It's not to insult anybody, because everything that he says, it's true and it's research, because you get to realize everything is being racialized. Even animals like dogs are being racialized. And this is something that happened. This is not what I mentioned. This is just white history. This is that part of history. This is the forbidden history that they don't want you to know. But at the end of the day, I just hope that the gentleman is safe wherever he is. I just hope that they don't unalive him, right? So I want us to watch this video. I hope it's gonna be an educational video. At the end of the day, I hope you find values throughout my commentary, because for the longest time, I've always been talking about the lies that these people have lied to themselves to begin with, and then they lied to the world, right? So let's watch the video. I'll be back.
Who looked down on laborers? Who looked down on beggars? Pure misery from top to bottom. Even within the same country, they developed regional and class-based divisions that kept them in constant conflict. They created strict racial hierarchies that excluded certain white groups, such as Irish, Italians, and Slavs, until it became politically convenient to include them. Meanwhile, other cultures built more flexible social systems. Indigenous societies often had communal governance rather than rigid feudalism. African and Middle Eastern cultures allowed for social mobility through trade, skill, and leadership. Asian dynasties promoted scholars and civil servants over bloodline alone. White people weren't uniting society. They were dividing themselves into misery. White people's royal families were too busy betraying each other to maintain stability. European monarchies relied on fragile marriage alliances that constantly collapsed into war. They intermarried so much they gave themselves hemophilia and other genetic disorders. Kings and queens were regularly assassinated, overthrown, and executed by their own relatives. The French, English, and Russian monarchies were all wiped out by their own people out of sheer hatred. Even today, European royal families barely tolerate each other, holding centuries-old grudges. Meanwhile, non-white monarchies maintain stability longer. China's dynastic system lasted for thousands of years, adapting to maintain power. The Ottoman Empire incorporated different ethnic groups rather than just inbreeding its rulers. African kingdoms often had check on royal power through councils and elders. White people weren't ruling effectively. They were playing a generational game of betrayal. White people have never even agreed on who counts as white. The British didn't consider the Irish fully white for centuries. The US didn't consider Italians or Eastern Europeans white until the mid-20th century. The Nazis reclassified entire groups of white people as subhuman when it fit their political agenda. Even today, white people argue over who is truly white based on ancestry, culture, and arbitrary rules. Meanwhile, other cultures didn't waste time on this nonsense. Most non-white societies recognize cultural identity over arbitrary racial purity. Many indigenous groups welcomed outsiders into their communities through marriage or adoption. African, Asian, and Middle Eastern civilizations absorbed new groups rather than excluding them. White people weren't defining race. They were constantly moving the goalposts. Even in the modern day, white people can't get along with each other. Europeans still hold centuries-old grudges against neighboring countries. Americans are politically divided to the point of complete dysfunction. White nationalist groups argue over who is pure enough to join them. Conservatives and liberals within white societies hate each other more than they hate their supposed common enemies. They spend more time fighting over regional accents and cultural differences than actually resolving their problems. Meanwhile, other cultures focus on collective survival. Indigenous communities emphasize cooperation over ideological purity. Non-white resistance movements prioritize shared struggles over minor differences. Black, Latino, and Asian political groups often unify around common causes despite cultural diversity. White people weren't creating stable societies. They were just keeping their infighting interesting. If white people were truly the most advanced societies, why have they spent history at war with themselves? Cope. White people have always had way too many dogs because they have always needed something to control besides other people. White people's obsession with dogs isn't about companionship, it's about domination. From European aristocrats hoarding hounds like status symbols to settlers using attack dogs to enforce slavery and colonization, white societies have long treated dogs better than people, as long as they were obedient. They bred dogs to enforce social hierarchies, hunting hounds for nobles, attack dogs for slaves. They prioritized dog breeding over feeding the poor, even when their own economies were in collapse. They weaponized dogs against enslaved people, indigenous communities, and their political enemies, because why do your own dirty work? They humanized dogs while treating actual humans, especially black and brown people, like animals. White people today pretend like their dog obsession is about love, but historically, it was about hierarchy, power, and violence. White elites have always used dogs to reinforce class hierarchies. In medieval Europe, dogs weren't companions, they were status symbols. In feudal Europe, hunting dogs were luxury items. Commoners were banned from owning them. Greyhounds, bloodhounds, and mastiffs were legally restricted to nobility. Owning a well-bred hunting dog was as important as owning land. It showed that you were better than the peasants. White elites treated dogs like extensions of their own power. Poachers, aka starving peasants, were executed if caught with a noble's dog breed. Dogs were bred to enforce class control. Bloodhounds didn't just hunt deer, they hunted people. Even in times of famine and war, aristocrats spent fortunes on their dog kennels because their dogs meant more to them than their subjects. And yes, the white obsession with purebred dogs comes directly from their obsession with racial and class purity. White settlers didn't just own dogs, they used them as colonial weapons. Wherever white people went, so did their attack dogs. Spanish colonizers used war dogs to terrorize native people. Columbus and Cortez didn't just bring swords, they brought mastiffs trained to rip native people apart. Dog terror was a colonial strategy, letting their war dogs feast on native peoples in public executions. They justified it by calling native people subhumans, but gave their dogs full military honors. Dogs were used to enforce slavery. Enslavers bred Negro hunting dogs specifically to chase, maim, and unalive escaped slaves. Bloodhounds and mastiffs were trained to track black bodies across plantations. Runaways feared the dogs as much as the slave catchers, because once they were set loose, it was over. Settlers also used the dogs to control Native Americans. During westward expansion, U.S. soldiers used attack dogs against native resistance fighters. These same Indian hunting dogs were later rebranded for police forces. While native people were driven onto reservations, white people built entire industries around sport hunting with dogs. White people have never just been dog lovers. They have always used dogs to reinforce racial and class order. White people have always prioritized dogs over human lives. If there's one thing that white elites hate, it's helping the poor. But if there's one thing they'll always fund, it's breeding dogs. During the Irish potato famine between 1845 and 1852, British landlords let millions starve, while continuing to fund elite dog kennels. During the Great Depression, rich white Americans kept their purebred dogs in luxury, while their neighbors starved. During apartheid, white South Africans refused even basic education for black children, but spent fortunes on breeding and importing European hunting dogs. If given the choice between saving a dog and saving a starving human being, white elites have historically chose the dog. And this mindset is still alive today. White people will donate millions to animal shelters, but ignore poverty in black and brown communities. They'll cry over a police dog getting shot, but justify cops killing unarmed black people. They'll campaign for dog adoption harder than they'll ever campaign for racial justice. White people have always seen some humans as less valuable than animals. White people invented dog racism while pretending to be against it. White people obsess over purebred dogs because they invented blood purity in the first place. Eugenics, the science of breeding superior humans, was modeled after dog breeding. Mustache Man Who Shall Not Be Named was obsessed with German shepherds and promoted breeding programs for both dogs and people. White aristocrats wrote entire books about how mixing dog breeds was as dangerous as mixing races. Even today, white people assign race to dogs. Pit bulls, aka black dogs, are criminalized, while golden retrievers, aka white dogs, get a pass. Black dogs get adopted less from shelters because white people unconsciously associate them with danger. Police forces breed and train attack dogs the same exact way they did in slavery and colonial wars. White people invented racism, then applied it to their own pets. White people's dog obsession is an escape from their own social decline. They refuse to have kids, but will raise 3 Labradors like their biological offspring. They feel disconnected from community, so they turn dogs into their emotional crutches. They want unconditional obedience, so they choose dogs over humans. White people's dog obsession is about control, not love. That's why they ignore human suffering while spending millions on pet pampering. That's why they cry when a police dog gets hurt, but justify police aggression against people. That's why they advocate for animal rights while voting for politicians who gut social programs for children. White people treat dogs better than humans because they don't challenge whiteness. Dogs don't talk back. They don't demand reparations. They don't compete with white men for jobs, and they don't expose white privilege. Until now. White people don't love dogs. They love what they represent: obedience, control, and unconditional acceptance. White people's dog obsession isn't about love. It's a historical reflection of how they see the world. Some humans deserve loyalty and care. Others deserve to be hunted and controlled. And the best companions? The ones who never question their master. White people don't own dogs. They need them. Because without them, they'd have to face the fact that their entire civilization is built on dehumanizing everyone else. Cope.
Hello, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing? I hope you're doing super great wherever you are. Now, there's so many things that were said, and I know you're shocked, right? Because you didn't expect from him. But he stood. He stood for the truth. And he said the truth because the truth, as you know, shall set you free. The gentleman been going around the internet and he's been trending for everything that he's been exposing to out there for the people to see. I'm glad and happy living in these moments, envisioning all these things happening because we need to, talk about all these things that are happening. We were lied to. We were lied to our history. Black people, all the good things were taken and given to white folks, and bad things were given to black people. Amongst the things that the gentleman was trying to talk about is the fact that good things that black people did were taken and given to white folks, right? And bad things that white folks did were taken and given to black folks. And you see the reversing, how they did it. That's why I usually ask you, we need to go and re-educate ourselves. We need to go and relearn our histories. Because what these people have been telling us is lying to us. The best thing they've done is just lie to us. So this video should tell you that if you are really shocked by what the brother said, it's true that you might want to go back and look up and learn history. Because it's important. It's in as much as it might look like everything he's saying is far-fetched, especially to the eyes of white folks. But you need to go and learn your history for the longest time because I've been using an example of Vikings. If you try to look at the type of life that they were living, it really proves all this. Them folks were living like animals. They were just, I don't know, like, that was so crazy. Sometimes if you see how black people walk with self-hate out here, it will tell you the magnitude of what the lies have caused. The lies have caused people to die. The lies have caused people to perish. The lies have caused people to hate themselves. The lies have caused people to hate their family. The lies have caused people to hate their ancestors. The lies have caused people to hate their lineage because they were lied to. And that's what the United States want you to believe. And that's what the United States wants you to still sit and think about. That you are not great. That your great-grandfather didn't do anything great. That when you ask a black person any achievement, they'll call a white name. Everything is tied to white. Everything good is tied to white, not black. But take a look. Sit down. Just think for a bit. And I'll insist that we need to relearn our histories. Because most of negative things that they have painted about black people and Africa, right, should tell you that there is so much, there is enormous things to learn that we can do if we learn from each other. So this is the time that I call upon all black folks, I call upon black parents to sit down and teach their kids what is called the true history, not falsified history, not fictional history, right? The American system don't want you to learn history. That's why they're banning the books. That's why they're firing teachers. They're removing all those programs that can make you get to learn and know your history. It's a program that's going on. They're doing it, and they're serious about it because they're afraid for you to get to know the truth. Because when you get to know the truth, you know your true power. You'll know who you are as a black person, and as a result, you leverage on that. And some of us who are endowed to get this information, I'm talking about those people who don't even take time and look on the internet, things like this. They just watch their programs and it's okay. But you need to sit down and think about your life, think about yourself, think of who you are and get to know your roots. Who are your ancestors? How did they act? Get to find the true history about them, because that's the missing link. Some of us, we don't know that our great-grandparents were kings and queens. If you try to look at your lineage, because Now that you're lazy, I know you'll not go and look at that. But it's something that is there. Instead, the mainstream media sold you the lie that your ancestors were being fed together with dogs. Like, and it's crazy because at the end of the day, that's what you'll walk out with. That's what you'll believe in. But you need to sit down and ask yourself, just think about your life. Maybe you've gone through college. You're a person who have studied social sciences like I've done. I've studied a bit of African American literature. Think about it. Do you think you need to go and relearn through history now? Until I think it is time for you to go and relearn the true history because it's out there. It's just waiting for you to go and dig deep, do research. Look at people like Dr. Ivan Satima. Look at people like, we have black scholars that have talked about all these things that I'm telling you. From African civilization to African legends that I did things, to Black American history, to the crackdowns, brutalities that black people went through. All these things are not included in history. Yet we are celebrating the black history without getting to understand and know the truth. So, in as much as white folks are being told about their truth, I feel and I think that we are mandated. Yes, I was looking for the word. We are mandated to teach those people who are behind us, to teach them to get to know the truth. You know what? The truth shall really set you free. Yes. I don't know where you're watching me from, but these represent Agentic Stories. If you're watching us for the first time, I'll ask you to subscribe to the channel. Join our membership if you find my commentary so valuable. Share this video. For those who are supporting me through my Cash App, I highly appreciate. If you want to support me through my Cash App is in my bio. You can check Andrew Candle. I highly appreciate you. For those who are showing concern, sharing my videos, subscribing to my channel, may God bless you, you and your people. Until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salute.